Hi, this is Scott with Etrailer. Today we're taking a look at and installing our Demco Air Force One with CoachLink for 2024 GMC Canyon. So if you're looking to flat tow and you have an RV or a coach with a air brake system in it, you're going to have some kind of system that you're going to be able to use your air to run your brake system. So with this, the Demco Air Force One is going to do that for you. What it does is it has a setup that goes underneath of your RV, and it will hook up to a tank underneath of there, and it'll have instructions on how to put all your lines in place. It'll run your airline all the way back here to the back. And what this is going to do, it's going to have air that runs all the way across and then plugs into your vehicle. It's going to run to a control box that's right behind our bumper here is where we have it. So it hides away really nice and it's not intrusive. And then it will run an airline up and into your vehicle, and it'll run to a cylinder that will actually actuate your brakes for you when you hit your brakes in your RV. Now when we do activate our brakes on the RV, or we pull our switch here, it will activate our brakes. Now up in our RV we have our CoachLink, and what this is going to do is transmit a signal back to the truck. We have a transmitter in there, and these will communicate with each other. All this does is plugs right into our 12-volt power outlet, and once we hit our brakes, we're going to see that our brakes are applied. So that's basically just giving us feedback of what's happening back behind us. To get your flat tow set up, there are quite a few components that you're going to need. You're going to need your tow bar setup. You're going to need your base plate kit. You're going to need a battery disconnect, a charge line, and you're also going to need a diode kit. That's going to be your wiring. That's going to be set up so you can have your rear lights on your towed vehicle. You're going to also need some type of braking system, which we have installed here. As far as installation goes, it is pretty involved. We ended up having to mount our control box in behind our fascia and onto our bumper support. So it is kind of tricky to get done. It is really popular system though. We do a lot of them here at Etrailer, so it is really a go-to for a lot of people. If it's something you're considering doing yourself, stick around and watch our video. If it's something you really don't have time to do yourself, you can take a look at our dealer installer and they'll get you set up with something local to get it done for you. To start our installation, we found that our vehicle does not have the vacuum boost. So what we have is we have our vacuum line here that would normally go to that. So in our kit, we have a little plastic plug that will go in the end of a piece of hose. So we cut off 2 inches and we added the plug to that. We're just going to go ahead and get that put on there. Now that we have that plugged, we're going to have our exhaust area here, and in the kit there will be a little rubber plug. All we're going to do is get the little rubber plug pushed into that port. Then we can take the supplied nut and just get it screwed down on top of that. We ended up mounting our breakaway switch here on the side, and this is going to pop out right in the hole in our fascia. So we ended up running our black wire up, over, around, and we ran it right over here. We mounted our box, self-tapping screwed it right here to our bumper brace, and then behind here we mounted into this bracket. Now one of our wires is going to go directly to our black wire from our breakaway switch. This one is going to come over and get grounded to our chassis. Now we have our place figured out where we're going to ground. We stripped our wire back. We got our wire cut to where we want it. Now we'll just crimp on our ring terminal. Get a good crimp on that. Always make sure it's good and tight. Now we can ground it. Now that we have it grounded, we can connect our 2 wires. Just want to cut some off of each. Now we can strip those back. Twist them. Now we'll take a blue heat shrink butt connector and get it locked in place. Always want to pull, make sure you have a good connection. That way they don't come apart. And we'll get our other one inserted and get it crimped in place. Now we can heat up our heat shrink and we'll get that sealed up. Just want to go around it until you see all the bubbles come out. And you'll see a little bit of gel come right out of the end onto the end of your wire. That's how we know that one's good. Let's do the one on the bottom. And we have our orange wire that comes off of our breakaway switch. We're going to run it right along the top of our beam of our bumper, and we're going to run it up in, through, and up. We're going to connect it, and it's going to run with that red wire up to our battery. So what we're going to do is we're just going to connect these two wires, and that'll give us a little bit of an extension so we can make it to our battery. And we are using a heat shrink butt connector. So that's going to give us a nice tight seal, and we're not going to get any kind of corrosion. Now we've got our red wire run up here to our battery. We're just going to let this sit for now. We have a couple more things that we have to run over here to our terminal. So for now, we'll just bundle this up and we'll let it sit right here. On the back of our firewall, we did find a wiring harness with a large rubber grommet. We did poke a hole from the inside out, being careful not to get near our wires. So what we ended up doing is running our airline through that, and ended up pulling through quite a bit. And we're going to be able to use this to pull wires in and out through that access point as well. Now we have our airline run through our grommet in the dash, and this is what's going to run over here to our cylinder for our brake actuator. Now we have this put in place, and as you can see, it clamps right around the arm of the pedal itself, and then it goes by cable down here to the floor where we mounted a bracket where we have this part here where our cable runs through and it loops through. We have that pretty tight for now, so we have everything set up there. Now we have our receiver underneath here, and that goes right up on top of this black box, and that's going to have a wire comes out of it and then comes down to here. Now that we have all of our wires and everything set up and put in place, now we can start getting our wires run, and we'll start getting things hooked up. Now, on our end of our reed switch, which is our brake actuator, we have these little tips. You want to leave those on there. Those are actually on to be crimped onto. So we'll just get that put into the end. And we'll get that crimped in place. And anytime you crimp, you want to make sure you have a good connection. Now the white wire off our transmitter is going to go to our brown one with it just crimped this blue end on. And we'll get that crimped in place. Now for our blue wire that comes out of our switch, that is going to be a ground. So I added some extra wire and I pulled it through with our airline that comes through. I'm basically using this like a pull wire. I am taping wire to this and pulling wire in and out of that grommet like a pull wire with our line, since we do not have that hooked up yet. So I'm going to take my extension for the ground that's going to run directly to the ground on the battery, and we're going to get it connected to our blue wire. We also ran an extension line in. This is our red wire here, and we went from red on our harness to red out. So what this is going to be is our power wire, and this is going to go directly to the battery. Now we have our power wire that runs out, and the red wire here is coming from our transmitter. We have our white wire comes over, and this goes to ground directly to the battery. These two, this one is going to be from our breakaway switch. We're going to put these two together and then we're going to mount them to our fuse holder. We're here with a heat shrink butt connector. Now we have our connections all made, and we're going to get a few more things hooked together down in the front, and then we'll get this hooked to our battery. Now we have our tube run down, and this is going to be our air out to our cylinder inside the vehicle. We have it plugged into our air outside of our Demco unit. One of the things you're definitely going to have for your flat tow setup is your battery disconnect system. This is basically a solenoid that will kick off power to all of your accessories except for the ones that are needed for your flat tow system. So basically, if you have this kicked off, it's not going to drain your battery while it's going down the road, and your vehicle is basically going to be running off power from the RV itself. Another thing you're going to need is your charge line kit. This is going to run directly to the battery and come through a relay, go down, and then to your plug. What this is basically going to do is help keep your battery in here charged while you're pulling it down the road. Other than that, it was a little bit tricky to get our setups for where to figure out where our air comes in and for our plug. So we had to take 2 long brackets and fabricate those in order to get them to mount up to our bumper brace on both sides. So we had to trim out a piece of our panel here where it comes straight across. We cut both of those out, and we ended up getting them marked in there and screwing these onto the bumper panel itself and coming down and then bending a 90 in both of our brackets, and we got them to drop out through here, so we're able to make our connections right here in the front. Now we'll take a look under our motorhome and we'll show you how we got our air brakes all set up. Back here on our frame is where we have our tank system set up. This is where everything is going to originate from. This is what's going to have the air going to it, and it's going to have a tank that's basically going to be set up for our emergency air situation if anything like that should occur. Now, if we follow our line back, we have our supply line, and this is going to come off of our main tank. So what we had to do is tie into this. So we had to cut our air. So what we did is we got all of our air out of our tanks, and we had to cut into our line and get it just right so we can get this in between them. These are just push-in connections. You just want to make sure that you have your lines really clean and a nice even cut. And then when you pop them on, you just spray them down with a little bit of soapy water on all of your connections, and they pop right in. They go in nice and tight. And after we did that, we ended up with no leaks. Now, if you look here, this is where we teed out of. That's the reason we had to put this on, is because we needed to tee off this so we can get air to our pump system over here, which is our tank. So that'll pull the air into the tank itself, and then we'll run air down out of the tank, and it goes into this. It'll come out of this, up, and then it'll run all the way back to the fitting that we have mounted on the back of our RV. And that's when we get air to our vehicle that we're towing. Now we have another essential part of our system right here, and this is our metered line. And basically we're going to do the same thing as we set up our other one. You do want to do some tests to make sure that you have the correct line before you start cutting into this. So what we did is we teed into this one as well, and we ran a line out, over, and up into the top of our unit. Right there. And keep in mind when you're running all of your lines, you want to make sure you have them up over something that's going to hold them up where they're not going to get down into any moving parts like exhaust, any of your suspension components, or even your rear differential. You want to make sure they're up and suspended and there's no chance of them coming down and making contact with anything. And that was a look at our Demco Air Force One with CoachLink for 2024 GMC Canyon. I'm Scott with Etrailer. Thanks for watching.